Today I'm going to talk about the eye. No, not those eyes, the human eye. I have a special friend that will help me in this video. His name is Blake. Vision appears to be something easy and normal, which does not require any extra mental effort. Just open your eyes and you see. However, the subjective ease of seeing requires a tremendous amount of brain processing required to allow us to perceive the world through the visual sense. 30 to 40% of the brain is involved in processing images, making us to differentiate many colors, shape and texture, but somehow we are still limited in what we can see, making us to consider the fact that even between us humans, do we have a uniform view?
I don't know.
Let's not forget to mention a camera and see the performance of an eye compared to a camera view. What makes vision possible? The eye, of course. So let's look at the eye without diving into complex anatomy. The eye is regularly spherical with a diameter of about 2.5 centimeters. It is a hollow fluid-filled organ sitting in the bony cavity called the orbit and held by muscles where only the anterior seat of the eye is visible to us. Made of an outer whitish tissue called the sclera, the anterior and most sensitive part called the cornea, loaded with pain receptors. In the eyes we have the iris, colored and unique to everyone, which contracts and relaxes to give the size of the pupils that will regulate the light intensity entering the eye, which crosses and meets the lens. So what's the lens? A transparent disc which focuses light on the retina. At the back of the eyeball, we have a pigmented layer and a neural layer. Just like your skin that has sensory receptors for touch, your retina has photoreceptors that is going to convert light energy into impulses. The receptor is going to send the information to the ganglion, which will convert and create the optic nerve, which will carry the information to the hypothalamus, then the visual cortex. The visual cortex relays signals through the LGN, that is, lateral geniculate nuclei, for processing. Coming back to photoreceptors, we have two types, rods and cones. Rods detect the presence of light, so are effective in night vision. Rods are more abundant towards the edges of the retina. They don't give the details of the images, they only see in black and white. Cones, on the other hand, detect the different types of colors. Cones are divided into red, green and blue sensitive types, depending on the wavelength of light they capture. Effective in bright conditions and give detailed view. The ganglions converge to form the optic nerve, and the area where they converge is called the optic disc. There are no rods and cones, and no photoreceptors, no vision. That area is called the blind spot. Our blind spot is normally in our field of vision, but our brain chooses to fill the blank with the images provided by the second eye. To what extent can we see? Can we see everything? Let's first look at what is visible to us. Our star and our planet gives us access to a broad spectrum of radiations. What we see are the electromagnetic radiations, or more specifically the part of visible light object reflects to us to have their distinct color and texture. Basically light bouncing on stuffs. It's known that frequency determines pitch and amplitude loudness, which is the same thing with light, where frequency is the hue and amplitude is the brightness. So low frequency may seem bluish in color, while high frequency is seen reddish, where the color might appear dull if it's at lower amplitude, but bright at high amplitude. Due to these little changes, a numerous variety of colors are gotten from visible light, which is just a tiny portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, ranging from long to short radiations which are present around us, but only that we can't see them. Example, we can't see the purple light being emitted from a remote, but using a smartphone it becomes visible. All this because our eyes can't see such low frequencies, and that is why modern remotes are being made with observable frequencies, which are usually red. Other people, however, are able to see UV light when they have their lens surgically removed due to cataract, causing them to be more sensitive to shorter wavelengths, so their blue photoreceptors absorb smaller photons. Since ultraviolet is of lower frequency, you will see the world like it's covered in a blue haze. But they usually think seeing the world in a blue haze is the side effect of the cataract, while they are actually seeing the UV light. Seeing through a broad range of the electromagnetic spectrum is not particularly necessary for our survival, since it's going to be overwhelming to the brain. Actually, the brain does not give care to reality as it is supposed to be, but instead creates its own reality and we just follow. With our three color cones, we see a wide variety of colors, but have you ever asked yourself if you all see the same thing? This color, for example, we all call it red, but there are people with four colored cones, and instead of seeing red, they could be seeing something else, but we will never know, and this effect is called qualia. Qualia is a propositional attitude focused on beliefs about the experience rather than what it is directly to experience it. We've all seen how an eye can be interesting, but I've been wondering if an eye can beat a camera. The answer to this will be given by my friend Blake.
So we are going to compare the human eye to a camera. First of all, our eyes can easily be fooled by optical illusions. What does this mean? So when we look into our environment, what we actually perceive is not the light input from our eyes. Rather, it's a mental reconstruction of objects by our brain. But this is not the case with a camera. You just take still images of an area. So have you ever heard that the quality of images taken from the eye, if converted into pixels, could amount to about 576 megapixels? Actually, this is true. When we look around and gather information of an area, but the image quality actually drops if we just take a single glance, like so, surprisingly to about 7 megapixels. There are three main reasons for this. Firstly, at the periphery, we can mainly detect motion with minimal color, and our perception is mainly impacted by our central image view. So at a single glance, our range of vision decreases from 130 degrees to only about 25 degrees. Secondly, our brain deliberately decreases our field of vision. For example, you realize that your nose is actually visible to your eyes, but the brain always chooses to ignore it. And lastly, the human eye has a blind spot of about 2 degrees. That's enough to cover 2 thumbnails. So what about moving objects? In the case of a camera, it's quite easy. Relevant snapshots of an object are compiled and made to move to create a video. With the human eye, a short projection of one figure and another similar to it in a different location at an interval of about 60 milliseconds is experienced as a moving figure. This is called beta movement. So if an object changes location fast enough, our brain would comprehend it as separate images of that object, but rather we see it like it's moving. We mentioned earlier that a video is basically a pile of images, which can also be called frames. So when we are watching a video or a movie, what happens is these frames are slides shown to us one after another at a certain speed, that is the frame rate. So if these frames are shown to us at any speed less than 14 frames per second, the video appears like it's lagging, but anything above that is fine. And that's because the brain withholds these frames in the LGM for only about 13 milliseconds. In reality, objects don't move like with frames. So what the eye does is it tracks moving objects during their motion. But then there's a downside to this, because when the object moves too fast, our brain, or the eye actually, cannot follow up with the speed of the object. So what the brain does is it creates a motion blur to fill in the empty spaces for the motion to seem continuous. So we've seen a few differences between the human eye and a camera. Which one do you think is better? Said it. Let's see. Object moves too fast. Example. So we are going to compare the human eye and thick. Hi. Diva. Tell me a comedy.
Don't camera direct now.